magazine Figure King issue number 239 came out in Japan this week. Had a huge extensive spread on the Power of the Primes line and its presence and how it will be presented in Japan. An interesting piece of information that came from this, which is kind of unfortunate. Translated by Snackis, which is a guy who's been part of the Japanese fandom for well over 2 decades.
Wow.
He pointed out that something that was mentioned in the article, in that Takara and Hasbro for 2018 will be, quote, unifying the world brands on an unprecedented scale. Pretty much meaning that for the first time since G1 has the brand pretty much will be the same on both sides of the ocean.
Right.
Because Generation 1, your Optimus Prime toy was the same as it was in Japan. Your Hot Rod toy was the same as it was in Japan. Yeah, there was little twists and turns here and there for other stuff, but in general, 99% of figures that were released in America had the same thing in Japan.
Right.
There was a few MicroMasters here and there that got unique repaints and stuff like that, but in general, it was always the same. When Beast Wars came around and Generation 2, well, Generation 2 was the same thing. More or less everything was the same. But when Beast Wars came around, that's when unique, tweaked paint schemes started becoming a thing, where their Black Arachnia had gold on the face, ours didn't.
Yeah.
Their Tigatron was a crisp white, where ours was like a off manila. You know, so they started that with Beast Wars, and it became an ongoing thing moving forward from Beast Wars, where Takara always had a different paint scheme, and to the opinion of most Transformer fans, the better paint scheme.
Yeah.
Always had the more show accurate one, or the more toy accurate one. Always had the superior paint scheme for one of many different reasons. The most important reason being, Japan doesn't really have price points in the same way that we have price points, so budget is a little bit different when it comes to toys in Japan than it is over here. But I think that this unifying of the brands, and now the product in America being exactly the same as the product in Japan, this might be a result of the current climate of how toys are on both sides of the ocean. We were just talking about not too long ago with Cyberverse and Rescue Bots, how the toy market is declining and it's becoming a very specific market, and Hasbro's doing whatever it can to save it.
Yeah.
Between Toys R Us having bad toy sales, which I'm pretty sure if Toys R Us was having financial problems in America and Europe and Canada, I'm pretty sure Japan might have also been having the same issues. But Japan, on top of that, has a country with birthing issues. Birth rate issues are on the low. There's less children in Japan than there ever has been. So that's also a big thing. So I think they're probably looking and going, is it really worth it for us to invest more money to make higher price point, more expensive product that is more or less, you know, going to be catered to a very small market, when we could just port over what Hasbro's doing directly from the factories and not have to put extra manpower, effort, design, and all of that? Which is a shame, because in my opinion, a lot of people always wait out the Legends and Takara repaints, because more often than not, it is the superior paint scheme.
Yep.
I know that every single Titan Returns figure, the American versions didn't really put much paint, if any paint, into the Titan Masters, into the individual robots.
Right.
But the but the Japanese versions did make that effort. So we're going to be going into this, where we have all these Prime Masters, which have these individual robot modes and stuff. And I was hoping that in the case of guys like Metal Hawk and stuff, that they'd have gold on the robot mode of the Prime Master to match that of the Pretender Shell gimmick. And just moving forward with a lot of the other characters, like we have the Darkwing, which is, you know, part of the Buster and Hydra duo in Master Force. Now that kind of tells us we're not going to get a Buster or Hydra repaint. We're just going to get a straight up port of the Hasbro release, which is based off of the American character, not the Japanese Master Force character. It doesn't mean that we won't get these repaints maybe down the line later, Like Hasbro, like Takara will maybe make a special repaint down the line or a 2-pack or something. But all it tells us right now is chances are everything that's going to be released in Hasbro on Hasbro's side is going to be straight up 100% what Takara is going to get. So if you thought that Takara was going to improve the Power of the Primes, Optimus Prime, Orion Pax leader class, evidently not, according to this. Same thing with the Rodimus, same thing with the Pretender Shell, Prime Masters, or the Decoy Armors, whatever you want to call them. Makes me interested. Is Jazz going to have his MAGA removed?
Yeah.
Nope. Look, that probably is still going to stay on there too. Everything's going to be straight up ports. So,
which is interesting. Usually you would think it would be a port from Japan to us, not the other way around.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, in the past when that has been a thing, there still was changes. Usually in the case of those changes, sometimes budget of paint, sometimes safety regulations.
Yep.
Sometimes
regulations.
Yeah. Well, to give one example, when it comes to budget of paint, a good example is Nitro Convoy from Cybertron. When he was brought over as Override, they took a lot more. There's little paint apps all over that toy that were removed and just left barren in certain areas. So it was a much more simpler kind of paint scheme. To give a case of safety issues, certain characters that had, I'll give you an example, X-Brawn, also known as Wild Ride from Car Robots, he had rear lights and backup lights and brake lights and all of that were all molded a very specific way. Half of it was because they felt that if those rear lights were broken, the shards of plastic would be sharp and would be dangerous. Other half of it was because they also wanted to keep an IP of Mercedes not being angry.
Yeah.
So by removing those, it doesn't look like the Mercedes car that it was kind of based on, which was like a Mercedes SUV.
Yep.
So I mean, there was always these little changes on both sides when stuff was brought to us or when we brought stuff to them. But this is the first time in a very long time, and I mean a very, very long time, that we're going to be sharing toys on both sides of the ocean. So I think the only difference that's going to be between the two of them, and this still hasn't been confirmed yet, is Sakamoto still doing the packaging? And if that is the case, is Sakamoto still going to be doing pack-in comics? So that might be the only selling point now, is this Power of the Prime stuff in Japan. If it still has a pack-in comic book, that'll still be the selling point to pick up the Japanese version over the American one. That being said, if it's going to be straight up ports of the Hasbro product, how will that affect the yen price for these items? Because usually the deluxes for Legends, because they were slightly more expensive, more paint, and had a comic, they were sometimes almost double of what you were paying in American retail. So I'm now curious what the prices are going to be for these guys when that comes around, but we have no announcement of that yet. So this is all very interesting developments, and it really makes me wonder what's going to happen, because I was really excited with all this Masterforce related kind of molds, and now it's kind of seeming like we're not going to get those repaints, at least initially. So we're going to be getting what America's getting, and then I'm kind of hoping maybe down the line we'll get some special, maybe an e-hobby release or a Hasbro web shop exclusive set or something. But as it stands right now, it's going to be straight up